Team, Casey Haynes here with Movement 33. Thanks for joining me, and this is just going to be a brief little video of how to organize your exercise routine. So we're so often talking about why we need to exercise or benefits of it or getting into it, but what's the how? How do we put this stuff into action? So keeping it very simple, the big thing that we're going to realize here is that consistency is most important. Whether you're doing CrossFit, you're weightlifting, you're doing Zumba, yoga, running, anything that qualifies as exercise, consistency is going to be your most important factor. So whatever it is that you choose, make sure that it's something that fits with your schedule, financially is feasible for you, it's something you enjoy, it's something that's going to keep you coming back and keep you consistently in the gym. Because a lot of people have great philosophies and a great way of exercising that can be beneficial for a whole number of people. It's the only the people though that are consistent are going to see those benefits. So now how I like to go about programming and how I find we get the most bang for our buck in my gym and we can create consistency as in a more well-rounded fashion is by breaking up into high intensity days and into low intensity days. So in general, there's 24 hours in between each one. So the schedule would look something like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is a high intensity day. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is a low intensity day. You have that breakup in between. And so I'm going to explain why that is important in a second. So when we think about high intensity workouts, we're thinking about CrossFit, we're thinking about sprints, we're thinking about weightlifting, we're thinking about things that are going to promote strength, power, speed, and they're going to focus on our big muscle movement, our compound movements, things like Olympic weightlifting, squatting, powerlifting, and then in another realm, things that are going to essentially tax our central nervous system. So, doing some rowing sprints, doing bike sprints, running sprints, anything that's going to get you really out of breath in a really fast amount of time. Something that's when you're done your workout, you're going to kind of wait a minute before you drive home to make sure you're not, gonna swerve off the road or barf in your car or something like that. High intensity exercise. So what is great about that is high intensity exercise both mentally puts you in a place that is gonna push yourself and is gonna rev the engine up, so to speak, okay? And how we're gonna create strength, power, and speed out of that is through the programming where we're training heavy weights, we're training under a high amount of stress, eustress, positive stress in our body. And again, we're using big compound movements to do so, such as squats, power cleans, deadlifts, big full body range of motions, and a lot of muscle recruitment going on in those high intensity exercises. Now, conversely, we're going to look into low intensity exercise for the next day. So that 24-hour time period in between high intensity and low intensity. So with low intensity exercises, we're going to look at things that are going to focus on our mobility, our coordination, our body awareness, and we're going to have somewhat of a small muscle focus on this. And the reason being for this small muscle focus is that when we spend so much time in our high intensity big compound movements, we sometimes neglect the smaller ligaments, tendons, the smaller stabilizer muscles that support those large ranges of motions. So with low intensity exercise, we're going to focus on these small muscles in order to, build the stabilization or build the readiness for your joints and the support for your joints and your ligaments and your tendons to handle those high intensity days. So taking care of the little things to help out the big things is what we're looking at. With mobility, coordination, and body awareness, we're not going to necessarily be taxing our central nervous system when we're practicing these. These are going to fall along the lines of, a mobility class, a functional movement class, a body awareness class, not jujitsu, but things that are getting you in touch with how your body moves. A yoga class, maybe light jujitsu if that's what you like to do. But the purpose for this is to mentally refresh ourselves and refresh our bodies. So mentally, we're having a low intensity day, we're going to be able to relax a little bit. The day's going to flow. We're not going to have to go to that dark place to get a lot of value out of our exercise routine for that day. We're going to be able to mentally take a break and not have to get ourselves all amped up to hit that 1 rep max or that new, that new PR or run the fastest mile we've ever ran. We can kind of give ourselves that mental break so we stay fresh mentally for our high intensity days. Also for our body, like we said, it's more of a recovery day. It's an active recovery day. We'll use that term a lot. Focusing on mobility, any aches and pains that you might have, spend a little extra time foam rolling on a lacrosse ball, massaging those muscles out, all those types of things. And you're still exercising, even when you're focusing on mobility and coordination things and going for a light walk, it's still considered exercise. It's that low intensity exercise. So a big thing with these days is don't feel like you didn't do enough. I'm sure you just did plenty for what you need that day. Okay, remember, we're trying to create consistency. And this is why I really emphasize low intensity days when I come into, or when I'm writing a fitness program. So we have high intensity days. This is where our big results are going to come from. Our low intensity days are going to support the ability for us to create these big results. Okay, so by supporting our smaller muscles, building a strong foundation, we're going to be able to do these amazing, awesome things in our high intensity days. So lastly, coming back to consistency, if we're constantly hitting a high intensity day, we're constantly beating ourselves down with no rest in between or no lag time in between, you're going to burn out. Okay, we need to remember that exercise programming, our exercise routine, should be something that aids and betters your everyday life, not impedes it. So if you're constantly coming away from your workouts, struggling to walk up the steps or not being able to as effectively perform your daily routines and such like that, this is going to start to become counterproductive for you, right? Your body grows and gains fitness, we'll say, when it's resting. Okay, that is when the adaptation starts to happen in your body. So high intensity days essentially are going to break you down. Low intensity days are going to aid in the building back up of these systems. So by alternating the two, we're able to break things down, put our mind at ease because we will do something on these low intensity days, these active rest days, and then we'll be ready for the next day when we have a high intensity day again. So we're creating consistency through having two options that we're going to work out with, on opposite days. So that being said, think about what you like to do as your program. Think about things that you enjoy. Think about what's going to work with your schedule, again, what's financially feasible for you, and what is ultimately going to create consistency in your workout program. If we're coming off, another thing that I'll notice is if we're coming off of these high intensity days, say we do 4 or 5 in a row, then we're tuned out for the next 3 days and we take the next 3 days off. We don't want that. We want a program that's going to complement your life, not impede your life. So try to become well-rounded. Think about what you can do on your low intensity days, perhaps working on certain ranges of motion, certain mobilities, certain movement patterns that might hinder you a little bit, or some things that you want to practice. Think about your high intensity days, what jacks you up, what gets you ready, what gets you fired up, and how do you react mentally when you're in that dark headspace of a high intensity day. All right, so ultimately, again, leading us back to consistency in your exercise program. All right, thanks again, guys. Movement33.com for any other exercise resources, personal growth resources that you might have, and I'll see you in our next video.